So I've got a question for you. What does 18th century France, 20th century New York, and a 22nd century space station all have in common? They're all in Hellraiser 4. Which you might be thinking is a bit strange, and granted you are right, but the real question is it good? Oh hell no, it's bad. It's laughably bad, and I knew nothing about this sequel going into it. And I really wish I had my camera on to capture my reaction, because when this movie starts, we're in space. The year 2127. There's a space station, and you know what? The design makes me immediately go, Hellraiser. So there's something you can say for this movie at least. It does have a visual identity that is on par with the earlier movies. I think it's because it seems to share design cues with that of the Lament configuration box. It looks like one of those that has been folded out. Don't remember what a Lament configuration box is? I got you covered. It's a puzzle box where if you solve it, it can open up portals to hell, summon demons and all that soul-damningly good stuff. Generally advised to keep away from children under the age of 8. Sharp corners can do a bit of damage. And this movie is basically an origin story for the Lament configuration box. And it starts with Dr. Paul Merchant. This guy, played by Bruce Ramsey, who actually plays all three main characters across each era of this movie. He is aboard the space station called the Minos, which, important fact, he designed. And he is using some very questionable CG robot hands to open a portal to hell to summon a demon, whilst the space police are trying to bash down the door because, well, the movie brushes past it very quickly, but I think it's trespassing. Before I saw this, I had no idea this was a space horror movie. And I just saw Critters 4 the other week, so I was like, am I gonna get a sci-fi horror space flick with all the crazy over-the-top gore that Hellraiser gives us? I'm totally down for that, I'm ready for that. Anyway, a short while later, this guy is telling his story, and suddenly we're in 18th century France. And let me tell you, if I had 100 guesses where this movie was going to take us next, none of them were 18th century France. 13th century Ipswich, maybe, but not 18th century France. So this is the gist of the movie. You see that guy? It all begins with him. This epic century-spanning tale starts right here with that man there. He is Paul Merchant's ancestor, again played by the same actor. He is an inventor, playfully known as the Toy Maker. No, not that one. This isn't that interesting, I'm afraid. Although, speaking of Doctor Who, a 22nd century space station linking itself to 18th century France, that does ring a bell or two. Anyway, this Toy Maker is commissioned to make something for a French aristocrat, with a very specific purpose in mind. Which, to be fair, now I think about it, is a tad redundant, because whenever anyone commissions anything, it's for a very specific objective. Which isn't really relevant. He is also a fun character, which is relevant to this video, if not poorly structured in terms of script flow. Yeah, I should probably have placed that line somewhere else. Anywho, the Toy Maker has created, and I will give you a poorly maintained frisbee if you get this right, the very first Lament configuration box. Ah, well, right, since there is no way you can prove that you got that right before I answered, I don't actually have to give you a poorly maintained frisbee, so loophole. Also, you may be wondering how this person could even create something that could manipulate the metaphysical barriers between Earth and Hell. Well, to be fair, that is a very good question. Moving on, the aristocrat and his ward, I guess, plan to summon a demon. This always ends well. Yes, so the demon possesses the nearby body of a dead girl that they killed in order to let the demon possess her. It's a nicely rounded sentence, that. Say hello to Angelique, played exquisitely well by Valentina Vargas, and she is so much fun. She is 50% of the primary antagonist of this movie, and that isn't because she shares the movie with Pinhead. No, It's because Pinhead takes half the movie to actually show up, and once he does, she's just kind of shoved into the corner. But while it lasted, she was a fun baddie. Very corny, silly, and just chewed the scenery. A lot of fun. And to be honest with you, I'd have been okay if she was the only villain in this movie and they dropped Pinhead entirely. No disrespect to him, Doug Bradley is still fun in this, but narratively it would have worked better with her from start to finish. And then we could have enjoyed even more of this wonderful villain.
Such pliant fingers.
Right, so yes, they summoned this demon, but it's okay because basic demonological summoning rules clearly state that if you summon a demon, you do control it as long as you don't stand in Hell's way, which essentially means Hell has its own objectives. And if you let the demon fulfill those, you can order it to play as much Oregon Trail with you as you like. Or, unless your apprentice murders the shit out of you so that he can steal the reins. Ugh, what is the world coming to when there's no honour among occultists? The Toymaker was spying on them and saw the whole thing, and says to himself, all of this demon summoning and murder, it's really not on, so he jogs on home and whips up another device that can somehow counter everything that's going on. Yeah, he's an unusually smart biscuit. I'll give you that. Sadly, Angelique and Jacques, played by Adam Scott, murder the poor bastard to death. And they look into his eyes as the lights are going out and tell him that his bloodline is cursed forever. And that's why it's called Hellraiser Bloodline. All clicking into place now, isn't it? Well, no, not really, but it's nice to be an optimist in this day and age. Okay, this is where we move on to New York in the 1990s. Before we dive into that, like a diver diving into a dive bar... No, that doesn't work. I want to talk a bit about the French portion of this movie. I actually really liked this section of Bloodline. The characters are goofy as hell and overacting to the heavens and back, but that's what makes it fun. I love the period piece setting, the set designs, the costumes, all that stuff was fantastic. Okay, fair, they spoke exquisite English for French aristocracy, but given the tongue-in-cheek nature of this movie, I can get past that. Personally, I find it a stark contrast against the initial opening in space, because all of that was boring as hell. Just drop that and do the 18th century France stuff. Seriously, I think the combination of Hellraiser's leather fetish and 18th century French torturing equipment would be a match made in heaven. Well, maybe not heaven, but you get the point. I would have loved to have seen this as the entire movie. But it's okay because we are done with that bit now and we'll never ever go back. Not even for a dashing encore. Alright, let's see how the City That Never Sleeps does. Miles better than space, I can tell you that. 90s protagonist John Merchant, again, same actor, Bruce Ramsey, is an architect. The character is an architect, not Bruce Ramsey. Bruce Ramsey is an actor. Although, to be fair, I've never really looked into his architectural interests. So, you never know. Who has designed a building that looks like the Lament configuration box.
It's both my pleasure and honor to present this award on behalf of the architectural community to Mr. John Merchant. John?
Well, if design inspiration is genetic, let's just be thankful his ancestor didn't invent the dildo and move on.
Merchant. The bloodline continues.
This gets Angelique's attention, who is in Paris with the now, I guess, immortal Jacques. Well, I suppose if you control a demon you can pull a few strings. But it's big mistake time! She sees the building and who the architect is in a magazine and tells him she must go to New York. Because, you know, cursed bloodlines and she must kill him and all that. Now, when she says cursed bloodline, I'm thinking she has to hunt down every single person related to the original Toymaker. But we're only focusing on the ones that have designed some hell-patented projects. But what I'm curious about is she deliberately waiting for them to reproduce before she kills them, or is she just really bad at her job? Not that it really matters, I guess. It is a distinction without a difference, but it would be nice to know. Jacques forbids her trip to New York, which means he stood in Hell's way.
Don't you want to know why I'd like to go?
No.
Is that your final word?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, right. Yes, he broke contract. Well, this could have a few possible outcomes. You see, it's very, very complicated stuff, but luckily I've got here a copy of the Demonological Summoning Guide. So, let's have a peruse, shall we? Right. Yes. Yes, 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 yes. Ah, right, no, that's not it. No, a bit further. Ah, yes. The breaking of a contract. Yes, here we are. Paragraph 73, subsection D. It is in an ancient language, but loose translation, you're fucked.
You broke the #1 rule, Jacques. You tried to stand in Hell's way.
From here, she meets John, flirts with him a little bit, and he shows her his latest design. An idea for a perpetual light source created by bouncing lights off of mirrors. Again, using another Lament-inspired design. One Trick Pony blood heritage or what? Then Angelique summons Mr. Head himself. And it's only just after saying that out loud that I realise sounds like giving someone an erection. Anyway, as I said earlier, from here, Pinhead basically takes over the movie. She does get some scenes, but it's mostly Pinhead from here on out. Ooh, and we get a fun death scene involving 2 security guards, who later appear as demons. I do really like how their design is based on their death or method of torture in hell. You know, in an appreciative, non-sicko kind of way. Honestly, I don't need help. Really, I don't. I'm quite stable. I only drink a small amount of blood out of skulls. The Toymaker's ancestor dies in order to protect his family, which means they didn't kill the ancestor's kid. The ancestor's kid grows up without being killed by demons. So I suppose that does kind of answer the question I had before, that they don't kill the children. They either wait until they're older, then kill them after they've reproduced. Maybe it's like a blood sport for them at this point. I don't know. Or, and hear me out, they only kill the person related to the original Toymaker if they create some hell summoning related thing. But then that doesn't really make sense either, because then it's not really a cursed bloodline kind of thing. It's a punishment for doing something specific kind of thing, which isn't really a curse. That's law and order. Well, I hope we've arrived at some kind of conclusion. Maybe. Anyway, that brings a close to the New York 90s chapter and propels us back to the future. God, that's a much better movie than this. Okay, so, as before we properly go back to the future, let's talk about the New York chapter. Better than space, even the stuff that's yet to come. Which is still worse. Trust me. But I still think France was punchier. Certainly campier. And France was also a very stylistic choice, whereas 90s New York was just more modern day stuff, which all the Hellraiser movies have been doing up to this point. So compared to a heavily stylized choice, it just felt more generic. Which, granted, are all reasons why the space segment should be a lot of fun. But no, I like John as the 90s protagonist. I think he was the best of the 3 that Ramsey portrayed, probably because he got the most screen time, and we saw more of his life outside the core Bloodline plot elements, such as his family, which then became something for John to fight for. I wouldn't say it was groundbreaking, just basic storytelling, which works well enough, but does fall into obscurity in an otherwise bland movie. Except for the France section. Talk about leaving you wanting more. Sadly, this movie then proceeds to give you more, but not what you ordered. I'm quite hungry, and that probably didn't make much sense. Okay, the finale of Hellraiser Bloodline. I make this sound like an anthology Hellraiser movie, which, to be clear, it isn't. But it isn't entirely not one either. Right then, Mr. Spacey Wacy Toymaker is telling Rimmer, not that one, that would be a lot more fun, he tells her everything that has happened. Which is how this movie is framed. The Paris and New York sections were flashbacks as he was telling this space cop his bloodline story. Leading up to this point here. Does she believe him? Bollocks to that. Would you believe him? Trespassing man does weird things with robot hands to a puzzle box, then tells you about his lineage and that he is cursed, and that he now has a plan to end the hell that his family raised centuries ago. No, of course she doesn't. Ooh, that raises a good question actually. How does he know? They never answered that. Maybe one of his parents told him, and their parents, and so far it was all passed down from the child that survived. Maybe Angelique or Pinhead, probably Pinhead because Angelique's too busy being shoved into a corner, didn't kill any of them after John. Because they didn't need to? No, that doesn't make any sense. Yeah, this movie doesn't make a ton of sense. I'm still left with the question of, like, if it is cursed to the point where every single relative has to die, but they don't kill children because weird demon moral code, I don't know. Or they have to create some hell-related objects. Maybe it's that, but again, like I said earlier, that makes no sense because it's a blood curse. That would be like saying, I was cursed and born to go to prison, but only if I commit a serious enough crime. None of this really adds up. I don't know what this blood curse is. Either it is, they are cursed and all of his bloodline must die, or it's not cursed and they just do whatever the hell they like. Or maybe the curse wasn't actually killing the whole bloodline. Maybe the curse was because the original Toymaker did that, then it was inevitable that every now and again one of his ancestors would create something hell-related. And then that would seal their fate because they would then have to die because creating hell-related summoning objects helps hell get raised and therefore benefits demons. Or maybe they don't like being on Earth. Maybe they prefer being in hell, and that's why when they are raised by the ancestors' hell-related summoning objects, they punish that person and kill them. That must be it. They kill his bloodline because they cursed his bloodline to create hell-related things every few generations, but they don't like being on Earth, so they punish them for making them leave hell. That's the best I got at explaining this movie. And I'm not quite sure it made sense. Anyway, the point is, she thinks he's nuts. Doesn't stop Pinhead and his goons from killing the other space cops though, which is a bit of a push towards the believability of his story. And the death scenes themselves? They were okay-ish. Wish it was as fun as Jason X though. I was unfair to Jason X when I did a video on it all those years back. I didn't give it enough credit for being, well, just a lot of fun. Anyway, it ends with a dumbfounded Pinhead being tricked by a hologram.
Where are you, Toymaker?
And I love the look on his face when he vanishes. Merchant and Rimmer escape on her ship, while Pinhead gets lasered by the Toymaker's bloodline's latest contraption. The Infinite Light Generation device put into action, which is now called the Elysium Construct, which creates an infinite light and then folds in on itself. Like an infolding box. Yeah, I'll go with that in description. That makes sense. Which finally kills Pinhead and Angelique for good. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, she is still around in the space segment, just demonified and less interesting. Okay, I say kill him for good. I of course mean until the next movie. But to be fair, the next movie is probably set in the modern day. So maybe this is Pinhead's ultimate fate.
No!
which is where the movie ends. My problem with the space section of this movie was it's just so dull. Visually, tonally, creatively, and other things that end with Lee. Just a bore-fest of a setting. Or rather, I should say, the execution of a setting. Because a Hellraiser movie set in space could be a massive laugh. But they made it set on this very unimaginative space station with very uninteresting characters, and with only Pinhead to add in a glimmer of fun. Outside of just the space section, I will give this movie credit for being the most out-of-the-box thinker of the Hellraiser movies that I have seen so far. Because they did try something different, which I have to respect, but they needed a bigger runtime to properly flesh out the different settings. Either that or just more creative writing and set design to pull this together more cohesively. It felt like some areas of this movie had more passion put into it than others. Personally, I wouldn't recommend Bloodline. I would say skip it. If you fancy seeing a Hellraiser movie, there are better ones out there. Worse ones too, I am sure. But they are a story for another day. Hellraiser Bloodline peaks early on and then swiftly descends into the blandest circle of hell. Hope you've enjoyed today's video, and if you did, hit those like and subscribe buttons, and I will see you next time. Take care.
I am pain.